Hi guys, welcome to this week's Classified here on Ickonic.com. This week we'll be looking into Elon Musk's and the cult's fixation on Mars. They're fascinated by the red planet, and I'm not 100% sure as to why. There seems to be many different connotations to this going through all sorts of belief systems, but we know Elon Musk is absolutely fascinated and fixated on colonising Mars and taking us all to Mars. So why? And what I didn't realise was there's a secret Jewish history of Mars. Now, this gets more and more bizarre as we go through. The only thing I can kind of come to the conclusion that this has a lot to do with the Kabbalah. I'm not saying I understand this stuff fully yet, but we're getting there together. So let's have a look at their fixation on Mars. So the first thing I'm going to look at is this article, and this is by Seth Rogovoy, and this is from February 2021. The Secret Jewish History of Mars. Yeah. Last week's landing of NASA's Perseverance rover on the Martian surface reminds us how life on Mars has long been an object of fascination here on Earth, from ancient times through David Bowie up until today. We'll come to David Bowie later, the Bowman, the Rainbow Man. The Perseverance mission is just the latest to explore whether or not conditions in the Martian past or future could support human life. Now that's one thing, looking into that. We've been looking to that for ages. I think that's more of a Kabbalistic overtone to that. But it gets into more shady waters or shaky waters here. While some Jewish traditions oppose searching for life beyond planet Earth and cannot countenance the thought of Jews settling elsewhere on another planet, Jewish curiosity about the heavens above is nothing new. It's in the Bible. Rabbis and sages have looked skywards for thousands of years, some combining their deep understanding of the Torah with the latest achievements in science and astronomy. And this is where the bad guys come in. They kind of, the only Hasidic texts that really kind of embrace science and technology, or scientism, or transhumanism. Jews have been pondering what life, specifically Jewish life, might be like on Mars for centuries. Now, we all have, in terms of different cultures and faiths and religions, this isn't, and beliefs, this isn't, specific to them. But what it does with theirs, obviously, it changes time. So their kind of mitzvahs that they have to do, getting this mission done by a certain time, their time schedule would be completely out, and that's what kind of seems to worry them. I know it's bizarre, but they are thinking of these things, or at least discussing them, and there may be a Kabbalistic undertone to it. Jews have been pondering what life, specific Jewish life, might be like on Mars for centuries, and especially for the past half century, since humans have escaped the Earth's atmosphere, apparently, walked on the moon, apparently, and lived in space stations, apparently. Isaac Israeli Ben Joseph wrote a landmark work for astronomy in Toledo, Spain, not Idaho. So Toledo, Spain, not Idaho. In the 14th century, which remained a relevant object of study for centuries, even before it was first published commercially in Berlin in 1777 and again in 1848. As UK Rabbi Zvi Solomons wrote, even star signs are mentioned in the Talmud. So the Talmud and the Torah, quite different books, and have different connotations or different kind of themes to them, let's put it that way. Our rabbis of old were astronomers and understood the heavens. This is how they set up our calendar so accurately, apparently. The prayer El Adon, or El Adon, is a Kabbalistic discussion of the planets. There we go. So it's a Kabbalistic discussion of the planets, and this is where the Sephironic Tree of Life comes in, and we'll have a look how that kind of blends in to where Mars sits in that, and what Elon Musk might be contributing to this mission. Since the destruction of the temple, apparently, Judaism has been, to a large extent, a time-bound religion as opposed to space-bound. So they've had a certain amount of time to get this fixed and, they bring their world to come around. But what happens to Jewish practice when a Jew finds himself in a space where time is measured differently? So here they go. They're not quite sure. And this might have something to do with them trying to reset daylight saving time, which I'm been looking into, being that it was William Willett that came up with the concept of that, or pushed that concept through, and Donald Trump's trying to get rid of it, and there's obviously more of a esoteric, occult connotations to why he wants to do that right now. So we'll be looking into that hopefully later in the year, possibly in a documentary. So how would one time the beginning and the end of the Sabbath, and how to reconcile living on another planet with Psalms 115:16? The heavens belong to God, but the earth God has given to humankind. So this is where it kind of throws a spanner in their works, and they're all a bit confused by this. A common joke refers to a scene wherein the first Earthlings to land on Mars are welcomed by a delegation from the local Chabad house on Mars. But even this is no joke. But it isn't. A Chabad-associated group called Tech Tribe has already put together, and you won't believe this, Jews in Space, a multimedia exploration of Jews' life on Mars. This blew me away. I could not believe I accidentally found this, and no matter how many times I try and get away from Chabad, it keeps coming back. So now they've got an association, or they're associated to this thing called Tech Tribe, who have put together this Jews in Space. I kid you not, a multimedia exploration of Jews' life on Mars. This is kind of like a presentation, basically, that they go around talking to people about. Humans could live on Mars before the end of the century, and Silicon Valley plans on making it happen. There you go, so Elon Musk. These projects envision new paradigms of civilization and culture to emerge on Mars. It's the red planet Mars. But how will niche cultures transport their identities to the stars? Tech Tribe presents Jews in Space, a multimedia exploration of Jews' life on the red planet, in the hopes that humanity as a whole, it's not going to be humanity as a whole, will begin to ask the big question of life beyond Earth. Now, this has all sorts of connotations of the Kabbalah tree of life and being a gateway between heaven and earth, and what Christopher John Bjerknes was talking about a couple of weeks ago with the inner earth, and he will be on later to discuss another topic that is relevant to this. For nearly 2,000 years, Judaism has served as a portable culture, taken and practiced through the diverse wanderings of the Jewish people, the diaspora, and sent everywhere in the mixed multitude, and they have to come back to Israel and Jerusalem. This is why their timing's out. If they go to Mars, that'll do it, wouldn't it? No wonder these, and again, remember what I said about 3 weeks ago, the whole video was about how confusing this is. Like, now you've bunged in Mars. Jews in Space uses the history as a backdrop to ask, what will Jewish life look like in space? How will our traditions, values and observances transfer to a new planet? Most importantly, what lessons can Jews living in Brooklyn learn and apply to their lives? That would be the Chabad lot, obviously, that's where their HQ is. Are they actually believing they're going to colonise Mars, or is this all Kabbalistic signs and symbology and nods and winks to each other? So this is the Kabbalistic studies, the Kabbalistic tree of life, and is often correlated with the 7 classical planets of astrology, which include Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, and the Sun and the Moon. Each planet is traditionally associated with a specific sephira on the tree of life, reflecting the planetary energies that influence the different aspects of creation and consciousness. By correlating the planets with the Sephirot, Kabbalists provide a cosmological model that integrates the microcosm of the individual with the macrocosm of the universe, highlighting the interplay between celestial influences and spiritual development. So here is an image I put together. So this is Mars. It's the 5th planet. So Mars is the 5th planet on the Sephirotic tree of life, as you can see there on the left. And it's just between 8 and 5, which is death. That's what connects the two. So that's very interesting. And that's the god of war. So that's who Elon Musk was portraying with his funny Baphomet suit, that really seemed to be more as a nod and a wink to the god of Mars, the 5th planet, the red planet. And this is all part of the Kabbalah. So whether they mean actually being on Mars or they're talking about a spiritual transcendence that they're going through, I would probably suggest that's probably more the case than actually living on Mars. Why is Mars associated with iron? Now, this is why Iron Man is Mars Man. Mars was named by the Romans for their god of war because its reddish colour was reminiscent of blood. The Egyptians called it Herdesha, meaning the red one. Even today, it is frequently called the red planet because iron minerals in their Martian dirt oxidize. Remember? Oxidize. That's what happened to Shekinah and the Statue of Liberty when it was gold and oxidized into this bluish teal colour, or rust, causing the surface to look red. So it's red there. There's an alchemical element to all of this stuff, which is what the Kabbalah is based on, these alchemical principles. So I don't think they're talking about going to Mars. They're talking about transhumanism and going through certain stages of what they would perceive is evolution, what I would perceive is devolution. Mars mythology. In ancient Roman religion and mythology, Mars is the god of war and also an agricultural guardian, a combination characteristic of early Rome. He is the son of Jupiter and Juno and was preeminent among the Roman army's military gods. Most of his festivals were held in March, thus the name, the month named for him, and in October, the months which traditionally began and ended the season for both military campaigns and farming. We've got this Farmer's Almanac there that we were talking about with Mika Dank not too long ago. So there's that element as well. Under the influence of the Greek culture, Mars was identified with the Greek god Ares or Eris, whose myths were reinterpreted in Roman literature and art under the name of Mars. So Mars was a god of war, and you can kind of see that god as chaos. You could see that as Shiva and many other the gods, Abaddon, Apollo, that come out of the bottomless pit. They all seem to have different versions of the same thing. I'm not saying they're the same character, but there's definitely connotations there. Elon Musk and the history of the Roman salute. Now, this was really, really interesting. He gave a Roman salute that most people thought was a Nazi salute. Now, Christopher John Bjerknes believes that he was mocking the Roman Empire. Now, if you look at any of the studies that we've done over the years, David's book, The Biggest Secret, called this out a long, long time ago, and Jordan Maxwell was talking about this decades ago, that clearly the architecture from the Roman Empire is the architecture for the city of London and Capitoline Hill. It's Capitol Hill, Capitoline Hill, the seven hills of Rome are the same thing. So Christopher John Bjerknes believes that he was mocking the Roman Empire, thus the Europeans and the Americans, as it was about to fall. Now, I've always said the Roman Empire didn't fall, because clearly it's still there. But it seems to be that these Kabbalistic Jewish Messianic Habadniks are trying to bring down the West, which would be the Roman Empire. How often do you think about the Roman Empire? Elon Musk claims to think about it every day. Well, he's been told to. Because he hates it by the looks of it. Given his frequent reference to Roman antiquity, I think we can take him at his word. We had that whole frog thing he was doing, wasn't he? From airing his views on the fall of the Roman Empire to expressing his desire to see a modern-day Sulla, and we'll come to what a Sulla is in a minute. Musk's views on ancient Rome demand our attention. Sulla, by the way, was the notorious 1st century BC dictator, so he wants a new dictator who had hundreds of his political opponents murdered. Very nice, Elon. On January the 20th, at a rally to mark the inauguration of Donald Trump for his second term as president, he is the 9/11 president, as we've said, 45th and 47th, he's the 9/11 president. Musk acknowledged the crowd. I just want to say thank you for making it happen. Thank you. He's mocking the crowd. He then put his right hand over his heart before extending his arm, elbow straight, at a roughly 45-degree angle, with palm outstretched and facing down. He then turned around to face the audience behind the stage to repeat this gesture. He is mocking, I believe that he was mocking everyone, saying you've brought down your own empire. Many who saw it were quick to claim Musk was performing a Nazi salute, but the fact is that this straight-arm gesture was actually first popularised by Italian fascist leader Benito Mussolini, who ruled as dictator in Italy between 1922 and 1943. So it wasn't a Nazi salute. I didn't think it was. It was a Roman salute. But it seems to be he was mocking the fall of the Roman Empire under the attack of this messianic cult. Sulla. So this is the guy he mentioned. Lucius Cornelius Sulla Felix, commonly known as Sulla, was a Roman general and statesman. He won the first major civil war in Roman history and became the first man of the Republic to seize power through force. He has a desire. Let's go back to that one before. So from airing his views on the fall of the Roman Empire to expressing his desire to see a modern day Sulla. He wants one of these. This is the guy that wants to put a brain chip in your head. So there's a little bit more here about the Roman salute. The closest that we come to a Roman salute at representations of a palm raised with elbow bent is a sign of greeting, a little like modern day wave. None of this is remotely close to the arm straight variety of the sort before Musk. So people are arguing over whether it was or whether it wasn't. I believe it was. So this is things that you would have seen before. Iron Man. This is Elon Musk dressed in his Halloween costume, and at first everybody talked about the Baphomet on the front and also talked about the inverted cross on the front. I mean, how blatant can you be? But it looks to me that he's playing Iron Man in terms of he's the god of Mars, he's the god of war, and that's who he was portraying there, the god of war, the inversion, also the Antichrist as well. And obviously he appeared in the Iron Man film there with the red lady in the background with the red dress. Don't be distracted by the lady in the red dress in the background. We all know what that means in terms of the conspiratorial knowledge. And Project Mars, a technical tale by Dr. Werner von Braun. As you all know, he was a Nazi rocket scientist, and he wrote this book. And in this book, the guy that took humanity to Mars was called Elon. He's been named after this. They're plotting this stuff out. 7 planets and metals. I won't go through all of this, but this is important to back up what I'm saying, that Mars is iron. So Mars Man is Iron Man. Mars tugs at the human imagination like no other planet. With a force mightier than gravity, it attracts the eye of the shimmering red presence in the clear night sky. Throughout the ages of civilization, Mars/Iron has stood as a symbol of masculine energy, vitality, and fiery passion. Fiery. The priesthoods of antiquity revered Mars, Iron, for its qualities of courage, willpower, and male generative force. So again, force, and you come back again to this Sulla guy that became the first man of the Republic to seize power through force. So it's all there written. Mars Man is Iron Man. This is the same thing. So then we come to these guys. These are the guys that we spoke about earlier. Tech Tribe Unwrapped. Tech Tribe curates exquisite events and learning experiences for members of the tribe in tech and digital media. So it would be the 12 tribes, lost tribes, or 10 lost tribes of Israel. Think of it like Uber, but for Judaism. I don't even know what that means. So these are the guys that are in Brooklyn, and these are the guys that came up with this project. So let's have a look at who they are. So Tech Tribe is a community of young Jewish doers and thinkers in the world of tech and digital media based in Brooklyn, New York. So there we go. And an affiliate of Chabad Young Professionals. So there we go. There we have the connection there to the Chabad Young Professionals. And as I was saying a few weeks back, the confusion that they must be going through all the time to try and get their head around any of this stuff. Do they actually mean like going to Mars, or is this a kind of symbology of going through the 5th Sephiroth, through Mars up to Saturn and to the 3 top levels of the Kabbalistic tree of life? Is this all symbolic? I'm not sure these guys at the lower levels even know. So Tech Tribe, this is from them again. When a lantern is placed, those who seek light gather around, for light attracts light. Again, this is the eternal flame that's trapped inside the Kelly pot, which is deemed to be the shells of the Goyim, or the nations. Chabad on Mars, pondering Jewish life in space, an artistic exploration from Tech Tribe, the Chabad House for High Tech. Again, there, it's amazing to think that they're thinking of these things, isn't it? I find this absolutely fascinating, that you can't tell whether it's like you're talking literally about going to Mars or figuratively. I would say it's all symbolic. In the 1960s, the world became captivated by the possibility of landing on the moon. Today, the space race has refocused on a new frontier, Mars. But if, or perhaps when, humans do journey to Mars, what will Jewish life look like? Rabbi Mordecai and Chana Lightstone, co-founders of Tech Tribe, a center for Jews in the technological and digital media industries, and an affiliate of Chabad Young Professionals, are not only posing this question but exploring some possible answers. Tech Tribe is known for producing innovative and varied events like Open Shabbat, an annual Shabbat meal at the South by Southwest Festival, and Chanukah parties that showcase a plethora of unique menorahs, including one made with a 3D printer, one with animated GIFs on it, and last year one that incorporated augmented reality. There you go. So they're already embracing this technology to move their kind of Kabbalistic understanding on. And this is all going to bleed into Donald Trump putting out this $500 million Stargate project that is going to fund AI, although he's been beaten to it by a Chinese company by the looks of it. Even then, there's more questions to be asked there. So let's just have a look at this, because this is even the Rabbi Schneerson was having a little go with Mars. So this talks about one of the inspirations, and even Schneerson, their main rabbi, was talking about this. This is from the Chabad.org website. One inspiration for the project, says Lightstone, is something that the Rebbe Schneerson of righteous memory once told the late Dr. Vivel Green, who in 1960 began working for NASA as part of the Planetary Quarantine Division. They've been connected with NASA for a very long time, which was then charged with trying to find life on Mars. Green recalled how the first time he met with the rabbi privately, or the Rebbe privately, the newly observant scientist mentioned that he'd heard that searching for life on other planets wasn't an appropriate field of study for an observant Jew. So he was an observant Jew recently. The Rebbe thought about it for a few minutes and said, "Keep looking. To sit here and not look and say there is nothing out there is placing a limit on God's creation. That you can't do." So they were embracing these things very, very early on, and these Kabbalistic principles. Now, this was really interesting. We spoke about David Bowie at the very start. His last album, I think, was Black Star or something like that, and he had so many occult symbols on there, and he died not that long after releasing that. So this is an image from Life on Mars. Now, what I find really interesting about this is that he's wearing that blue teal Shekinah suit for protection, but he's also wearing a red stripe around the tie, which would signify to me that he is the scapegoat here. Now, this will become very, very important, what we're talking about in the interview. Now, Christopher John Bjerknes is back on this week to talk about this scapegoat, and he's going to be on the next couple of weeks to really look and dive into this stuff, because this is the most important stuff that I think is out there at the moment in terms of understanding what these lunatics are pushing. And if we can decode that, then we've got a chance of warning people about it. So when you look at this and you start to understand the symbology and you understand the coding and the language, for me that red stripe on his tie is the scapegoat. So here you have a picture of the scapegoat, and you can see there the red string or ribbon put around its head. That scapegoat is allowed to go. All the sins are placed onto that scapegoat, and in one version of the story it wanders off a cliff. And this is what I believe all of these Kabbalistic guys are doing. Donald Trump, everyone involved with Chabad Lubavitch, Tucker Carlson, all of these guys that I believe are Kabbalists are leading you guys off a cliff or anyone who follows them, sorry, off a cliff. I know that we don't follow them. This has even got a rainbow in the picture of it, which would be obviously the Rainbow Man, David Bowie, the Rainbow Man. The rainbow obviously is the Noahide laws. We saw that during COVID as well. It all comes together. This whole thing, that rainbow is a promise from God not to flood the world again. And it has been pointed out that it was just a promise not to flood the world again and reset it. But the scapegoat will take all the sins, I believe, of Israel and place it onto the nations, which will be us. And that's where I think someone like Russell Brand, whether he knows it or not, is leading his Christian followers off a cliff and as the scapegoats for the sins of Israel. This is something that sounds absurd, I know. It all sounds absurd, but, we're looking at things here like Jews on Mars, Jews in space. It's just absurd. But these things don't, I think, necessarily mean the physical relocation of people. Although it could do. I could be wrong. I could absolutely be wrong. But what we're looking at here is all of this symbology coming together around these messianic guys. And what I wanted to point out here, now, you will not believe this picture, and I could not believe this. And I'm going to discuss this in the interview coming up with Christopher John Bjerknes. This is an image of Donald Trump with the head of a goat looking in the mirror with a red tie on. Now, this was posted by his son, Donald Trump Jr. So was he trying to signify that he's the scapegoat, his dad's the scapegoat? Is it a cry for help? Or are they signifying to everyone that you guys will be the scapegoat, those that are following Donald Trump, and they're mocking you, which I believe Musk was mocking with this Roman salute? We'll be speaking about that now with Christopher John Bjerknes. So guys, I know I keep coming back to these bad guys, and I do apologise for that. And all I was trying to look at this time was to look for the significance of Mars and why they're so fascinated with Mars, like the Nazis and von Braun and Musk. And it came back to the Kabbalah and these Messianic guys. Comes back to the Noahide laws with the rainbow. It comes back to the red tie and the goat head, the scapegoat, and also the red Kabbalah string that people have on that Tucker Carlson wears, because they're signifying to you that they're the scapegoats. And also Putin wears one too. He's a scapegoat. And they're going to scapegoat this stuff onto the West, I believe. Christopher John Bjerknes joins me again today to really dive into this, and I've got him on for the next 2 weeks because the first part of this will be talking about this scapegoat and diving into this image with Donald Trump. That could not be any more blatant than having your dad's head took off and put a goat's head on with a red tie, which would be the Kabbalistic string, or the red tie or the red ribbon on the scapegoat. It's so blatant. It's so blatant, and we'll be discussing that. And then in the following week, we're going to get together again, and we're going to discuss the workings and the information that he's found to back up his theory of what they're doing in Greenland and this Garden of Eden within the earth. Absolutely fascinating stuff. Thank you for all your support. Remember to do your own research, come to your own conclusions, but this all seems to be going back the same way. Take care, and I'll see you in a week's time. Goodbye. Hi guys, welcome to this week's Classified. I am here again with the returning Christopher John Bjerknes. Now we're going to dive right into this Hollow Earth Greenland situation with Trump. I know you guys had a lot of questions about some of the information that Chris came up with last time, and also look what he's doing now. He's coming out with this scapegoat symbology. This is really ramping up, and Christopher is the only person out there who's really talking about where this is actually heading and has been for the last 3 decades. Christopher, is really getting to the point now where it's absurdly obvious that they've lost their mind, haven't they?
Yeah, they lost it 2,500 years ago, and this is the latest theater act in their drama that we are witnessing, and it is the most serious and the most dangerous because technology now affords them with the opportunity to exterminate all of us. And they're setting about doing it, and they're trying to do it in imperceptible ways. But at the same time, they have always practiced something called sympathetic magic. And they believe that the Torah represents a script for the map of creation. And part of designing this script is utilizing sympathetic magic by putting out their symbols and icons and storylines and narratives. They believe that they are writing the future of creation into existence. And this all stems from the Egyptian god Ptah and the idea that words and language and scripts become reality. So they are scripting reality. So they have to work it both ways. One, they have to keep what they're doing hidden and occult, but at the same time, they have to put it out there so that it manifests itself in the future according to the script that they want. And that's one of the reasons why I've been working so hard for the past 2 decades, is to counter that narrative and to utilize my abilities to put out an alternative narrative, which is actually the truth, and to make it obvious and plain and open and not occult or hidden, so that we can script the future instead of allowing them to script the future. And that's why I'm so grateful to you for having me on and having me back. It's wonderful to be back.
Well, it's always wonderful to speak to you. And guys, if you don't kind of get another kind of a backup of what Chris just said, I believe, and you can correct me if I'm wrong there, is the Oscar designed on Ptah, the Oscar that they received here in Hollywood. I believe the statue is actually designed as Ptah.
I never considered that. It always reminded me of what they showed when they created the United Nations man, who was supposed to be like the Kalergi man, kind of a formless conglomerate of all of humanity into one shapeless form. But the fact that it's golden may well relate to Ptah. I hadn't thought of that.
It's so fascinating when you start to pull this apart. But one of the first things, and I just sorry to dump this on you straight away before we get into this, but we cannot not talk about the scapegoat symbology posted by Donald Trump Jr. I believe it was today. You're the first person I saw posting it, and I was like, this is so on the head. Can you take us through what the symbology of this means? Because this is what's really important, guys. Have you ever been blamed for something you didn't do? Well, you're about to be blamed for something you really didn't do. And Christopher will explain the symbology of this.
First, I should thank someone on Twitter who called my attention to this. Um, and then I was able to do a Google search based on the image and pull this up on Instagram. You see Donald Trump looking into the mirror, and he represents the goat. And the goat has twofold symbology. It symbolizes both Samael, the devil, and it symbolizes the scapegoat in the scapegoat ritual of Yom Kippur. And it also signifies the Messiah, son of Joseph, who is Jesus Christ, who was Cyrus, who was Haman, who was Adolf Hitler, and who is now today Donald J. Trump. And the purpose of the scapegoat is to transfer all the sins of Israel onto the Gentiles, so that the Israelites are not punished for their sins, but the Gentiles are punished for their sins in their place. And that was the role of Jesus Christ, to destroy the ancient Roman Empire and to scapegoat the Romans, Greeks, and Egyptians for all the sins of the Israelites, so that the Israelites could obtain redemption for their sins against God, like worshiping the golden calf. So Gentiles become the scapegoat, and this happens on Yom Kippur. On Yom Kippur, the high priest sacrifices two goats, one in the temple and one in the wilderness of Azazel. The goat that is scapegoated in the wilderness to Azazel is given to the devil, Samael. And the devil is the prosecutor and accuser in the heavenly court. The roles of Satan include being the witness, the tempter, the accuser, the prosecutor, and the punisher. So they believe that on Yom Kippur, there is a heavenly court held, and the high priest gives Satan, through this sacrificial goat, a list of all of Israel's sins. And then the accuser, the adversary, Samael, Satan, Hasatan in the Bible, then goes into the heavenly court and issues his accusations. And there's a jury of the 70 princes of the 70 nations. The word Goyim means nations, Gentile means nations. And each one of the nations has a prince in the high court. And this all goes back to the Canaanite mythology of the sons and daughters of El. And Baal is supposedly the prince of the Jews. And then there are 70 princes of the Goyim. And these relate to each of the 70 generations of Noah, who formed the 70 nations of the Goyim. Each one of those nations has its prince in the heavenly court, which is its guardian angel. And then when Esau and Jacob were born, there was a 71st prince for Esau, who is Samael, who is Satan. And they believe that Esau descends and has the soul of Cain, and that Cain is the progeny, the child of Satan and Eve from the Garden of Eden. So Esau bears this satanic soul. He is the lot of Samael, the lot of Satan, and he is the child of Satan. And Satan is his chief prince of princes of all the Goyim, of all the nations, and is the guardian angel of all the Goyim nations, and is supposed to represent them in the heavenly court as their advocate and prosecute Israel, because Israel is always sinning against them. But the Israelites give Samael, the father of all the Gentiles and mother of all the Gentiles, this sacrificial goat on Yom Kippur, which is called the scapegoat. The mythology of the scapegoat derives from this. And Samael becomes busy with this scapegoat and becomes distracted, and in the heavenly court places all the sins of Israel onto the necks and heads of the Gentiles. So in that way, the Israelites obtain redemption from their sins and can enter into the messianic era of the world to come, and can be restored to Israel, exterminate the Amalekites, and anoint their king, Messiah, son of David. But the Gentiles get scapegoated and blamed for all these sins in this heavenly court by their own treacherous father. And because they bear the burden of these sins, they are prosecuted. They are accused by Satan, their father, and then they are punished by Satan, their father, and executed. And all of these roles are taken on by the Messiah, son of Joseph, by Jesus Christ. He played the role of the scapegoated lamb that was sacrificed to save the nation of Israel, as Caiaphas says in the book of Matthew. And the Gentiles are all scapegoated for the sins of Israel. So we now have the Antichrist, the Christ returned as the Antichrist in the form of Donald Trump, who is scapegoating the West for all the sins of Israel. The slaughter of the Palestinians in Gaza is blamed by Trump on Hamas, and then America, for supplying all the weapons under Biden and now under Trump, gets blamed for all the things that the Israelis do. So we become the scapegoats for all the sins of Israel, and they're turning the entire world against the West, and specifically America, so that they can annihilate us. And this is the role of the scapegoat that Donald Trump is portraying. And we see this imagery being put out that reveals all this, so that this script and this narrative is put out into the universe, so it becomes our future. And I have proof of all this. I've been saying this for 20 years. And I found this article, The Attitude to Christianity in Sefer HaMashiach, where Satan comes to defend the Israelite nation, and Christians come to defend the Israelite nation and to become the scapegoat for Israel. And this was always the plan of Christianity, because Jesus is Satan. Jesus is the serpent on the tree of knowledge of good and evil, giving out gnosis. That is Jesus represented on the cross, the serpent in the tree of knowledge of good and evil. And his role as Messiah, son of Joseph, was to become the leader of the Roman Empire, which he eventually did, and then to subvert and destroy it and bring enemies against it. And Donald Trump is now fulfilling that role. And you can see, rather this day forward, you will defend the Israelite nations. And by this, you will break the power of Samael and hasten redemption in your time. This all relates to the Sephirah Gevurah, which is the planet Mars, which is the planet of Samael and the planet of Esau. We undergo the birth pangs of the Messiah, which was just happening with Netanyahu, who is the Jewish Messiah, son of Joseph, eviscerating and just negating all the power of Iran. And this also relates to the sun, Tiferet. A very interesting aspect of all this is that Shekinah, the female aspect of God, has sex with Esau and Jacob to bear the two messiahs. The Messiah, son of Ephraim, from Esau, who has sex with Shekinah, his soul, to produce the Messiah, son of Joseph, also called Ephraim, and the Messiah, son of David, from Jacob. So Donald Trump is the product of Shekinah and Esau, producing the return of the Christ as the Antichrist. Originates not only from Esau, but from Samael. So this is actually the devil having sex with the female aspect of God to produce Jesus Christ through Mary, just as Cain was produced through Eve by having sex with Samael. The mystery of Samael is the mystery of Joseph. That is the mystery of the Messiah, son of Ephraim. Another point in the work, the death of Samael is equated with the death of the Messiah, son of Joseph. So the Messiah, son of Joseph, is the son of the devil, and he is also the devil himself, and he is also the suffering Messiah and the scapegoat, and he is also the Messiah anointed for war. And he will kill the Messiah, son of Joseph. That is the mystery of Samael. This represents not only the transformation of the prosecutor into an advocate for the defense. Jesus Christ was initially a prosecutor of Israel. He railed against the scribes and the Pharisees, and he accused Israel of its sins, and he anticipated the destruction of the temple and the diaspora. But now he has returned in the form of Christian evangelicals and Donald Trump to become the advocate for the defense. And this has been planned from the very beginning. The Sefer HaMashiach was written in the 1400s. And shortly after that, we had the Reformation, which made Christians the advocates for Israel and pushing the idea of Christian Zionism. This conception is of particular interest given the historical background of Sefer HaMashiach. At a time of relentless persecution and forced conversion, the author envisioned an eschatological future when Christianity would be forced to enter the covenant of circumcision, when Christianity would be cut off. The Goyim are referred to in the Zohar as foreskins, to be circumcised. In other words, to be blotted out as if they had never existed, and would be transformed into a defender of the Jews, which has happened to Christianity under Putin and under Trump and under Bush and Reagan and all the Christian evangelical leaders who make trips to Israel and are given jets by Israel and have turned Christianity into the defender of Israel. Christianity, so converted, would finally meet its death. Christianity dies. We are to be destroyed in this. And the role of Messiah, son of Joseph, is to lead us into destruction. Jesus Christ led the Roman Empire into destruction. America is the new a messianic, apocalyptic, Edomite, Amalekite Roman Empire, and it is to be destroyed by Christianity, just as the ancient Roman Empire was destroyed. Christianity, so converted, would finally meet its death in the war whose outcome will pave the way for the complete redemption of Israel. And part of the redemption of Israel is the extermination of the Amalekites, which means us, and most specifically, the West, the Christian, Roman, Amalekite, Edomite West. The Christians mock the Jews for waiting for a Messiah that in their belief has already come. Those same Christians will be transformed into the saviors of the Jews. Christ initially persecuted and prosecuted and accused them, but just because he is Satan, he flips and becomes the defender of the Jews and accuses the Gentiles of all the Jews' sins and then punishes them and exterminates them. This doctrine appears to be an ironic interpretation of the Christian claim that the Messiah has already come. Indeed, the Messiah has come, the treacherous Messiah, son of Joseph, that is Christianity, to pave the way for the Jewish Messiah, son of David. Perhaps that is the meaning of the claim of Sefer HaMashiach. So it's very important for people to understand there are two Messiahs. There's Messiah, son of Joseph, the suffering Messiah of Isaiah chapters 52 and 53, the false shepherd who misleads people of Zechariah chapter 12, who sets everyone up in the West and in Christendom to be killed off in order to redeem the nation of Israel. And this was not only said by the Kabbalists, this was said much earlier in the apocalypse of Abraham, in Revelation chapter 19, in the Gospel of Judas. The Christ returns as the Antichrist to kill off all the Christians after the Christians served as the scapegoat to obtain redemption for Israel. And we see that Donald Trump is a Kabbalist who worships the Messiah, son of David, Rebbe Menachem Mendel Schneerson, whose soul will be reincarnated after Trump redeems Israel in the wars of Gog and Magog. And the behemoth and Leviathan consume one another in this war and kill each other off. He prayed to the Rebbe to win the election, and this is the Rebbe's grave. So we see the Messiah, son of Joseph of the Gentile side, worshiping Menachem Mendel Schneerson, the Chabad Lubavitch apocalyptic messianic cult leader who they believed was the Messiah, son of David. But he could not assume the throne until redemption was given by Messiah, son of Joseph. And Messiah, son of Joseph, has to exterminate the Amalekites. He has to rebuild the third temple. And he then dies, and his soul enters the vessel of Messiah, son of David, and the two become one. Everything becomes unified and perfected, and the unity of God is restored. The male and female become androgynous in one body. And then the soul, the reincarnated soul of whoever they have scripted for this role, will then assume the throne of the world. And you'll notice that when Donald Trump prays, he bobs back and forth in the Jewish manner of prayer. He doesn't clap his hands together as do Christians. Instead, he rocks from side to side, and he bobs back and forth in the Jewish manner of prayer. And he was doing that when he issued his prayer at the Rebbe's grave. And he also did that when he was praying at the Wailing Wall, and he covered his head because he is a Kabbalistic Jew. And I've seen him do that several times whenever he is praying or whenever someone is stating a prayer. You could even see it at the inauguration. He begins to go back and forth and to go side to side because he's been taught that that is the proper manner of prayer. These are some very important passages from the Zohar related to all of this. Oops. Rabbi Isaac said, "Give the fool who stands before the king some wine and tell him all the faults and errors thou hast committed, and he will come and praise thee and say that there is not another in the world like thee." So here the informer, who represents Satan and Samael, the accuser, the witness and tempter of sin, is ever before the king. And Israel presents him with a gift along with a list of the faults and wrongs which they have done. And he comes and praises Israel and becomes their defender. This story is telling the story of Samael being given the gift of the wine in the form of the scapegoat, so that he will get this list of all the sins done by the Israelites and all their wrongs, and he will instead become their defender instead of their prosecutor. And God puts all those on the wicked, on the head of the wicked of his own people. So what happens on Yom Kippur is Samael, the 71st prince of princes of the Gentiles, is supposed to accuse Israel of all its sins. And he's even given a list of all the sins of Israel. But because he is given this scapegoat, he instead puts all this on the head of his own children. The Gentiles are Satan's children, and Satan is their guardian angel and is supposed to defend them and prosecute the Israelis. But because they have bribed him with this goat and made a sacrifice, a worship sacrifice to the devil, he instead takes the side of the Israelis and falsely and unjustly accuses the Gentiles, the Goyim, of the sins of the Israelites. So we get scapegoated for everything. We get prosecuted for it, and ultimately we get punished. And our ultimate punishment that brings the ultimate redemption to the Israelis is our complete and utter extermination. And then they believe they will have cleansed the earth of the evil of the Gentile side, of the Sitra Achra, the other side, the Sitra de Smola, the left-hand side, the backside, the anus of the universe, whereas the Israelites are portrayed as the front side, as the Sitra Yamina, the right-hand side, as the Sitra de Kedusha, the holy side. So they believe that in this way, by scapegoating us for all their sins, they incite Satan to exterminate us. But because Satan doesn't exist, they themselves take on that role of exterminating all of us, and they themselves take on the role of falsely accusing us of all of their sins, so that we bear the burden for all of that. And they pit peoples against one another by blaming these peoples for all the actions that they take, for the world wars that they incited, for the depressions that they created. It's always their Shabbos Goyim leaders who get scapegoated and blamed for that. And it's Jesus Christ who gets blamed for all the anti-Semitism for 2,000 years. And for the Romans get blamed for the destruction of the temple and Jerusalem. And therefore they believe that they have a right to then exterminate all of the Gentiles as punishment for all of those sins, which were in fact mostly incited by they themselves. So God puts on the head of all the wicked of his own people. His represents the devil, Samael, Satan. So God puts the sins of Israel onto the heads of the Gentiles and then calls for their punishment of extermination. Said Rabbi Jose, woe to the people of Esau, meaning the Gentiles and especially European Christians who represent the Edomite, Amalekite, Roman Empire of Christendom in the West. At the time when Israel sent that he-goat on Yom Kippur to the informer who is their chieftain, the prince of princes and guardian angel of the Gentiles is their father, the devil, Satan Samael. Since for its sake he comes and praises Israel, and God diverts all those sins onto the head of Satan's people. Said Rabbi Judah, if the heathen knew of that he-goat, the scapegoat, Jesus Christ, Donald Trump, all the Gentiles combined, they would not leave Israel alive a single day. So it's very important for people to understand that I'm revealing something that they have always desperately tried to keep hidden from you, because they fear that if you find out that they do this, that in the heavenly court, they put all their sins onto us, and that we are considered righteous and pure, and they are considered sinners. But they flip it by getting our supposed father and progenitor, Satan, to accuse us in their place, and ultimately to exterminate us through that process, that we will flip the script and turn the tables on them, and they fear their own extermination. And no sane person should call for the extermination of any peoples, but that is why they keep everything so carefully guarded and utilize this cryptic coding in all they do, so that we don't realize what they do and seek to defend ourselves. And they think it is sinful for us to seek to defend ourselves, because they perceive us as the children of Satan and wicked. And therefore, it is wicked for us to desire to continue to exist, and that we should instead seek to commit suicide for their benefit. And you will see that Christianity creates this foreign savior figure that calls for us to die off in order to be saved. They do the same by making Vladimir Putin or Xi Jinping or Kim Jong-un our supposed saviors and heroes who seek to exterminate us. And just as Christianity places all the sins of Adam onto us and makes us believe that we are conceived in evil and are evil beings and can only obtain salvation through our destruction in death, they do the same thing with these foreign saviors and say that they will redeem the West by exterminating it, and that the West has no right to exist because it is supposedly evil and degenerate. And they make all the people who claim to be patriots of the West into suicidal maniacs and religious fanatics who look to these people like Vladimir Putin, Xi Jinping, and Kim Jong-un to come and kill us, and they believe that will be their salvation. So it's the same model played over and over again to scapegoat us for all the sins of the world, to make us self-hating and self-deprecating, and to cause us to seek our own destruction and promote our enemies as if they are our holy saviors. Said Rabbi Judah, if the heathen knew of that he-goat, you now know, they would not leave Israel alive a single day. All that day, God, and this is what the Zohar is saying, not me. These are not my beliefs. All that day, Satan is occupied with that goat, the scapegoat given him on Yom Kippur, Jesus Christ, Donald Trump, the Goyim. And therefore, God makes atonement for Israel and purifies them from all their sins and all that they are accused before him. Now, it's necessary to understand that the goat is a sacrificial animal, and therefore it has to be blameless. It has to have no flaws. It has to be sinless. So in their conception, the Gentiles are actually the pure, righteous ones, the blameless ones, the sinless ones. And Satan himself is blameless, righteous, and sinless, and stands at the right hand of God as the accuser of sins. And he can do that because he, in their minds, is righteous. So it's important to understand that their God is actually Seth Typhon, who represents chaos and darkness and pure evil. And they believe Gentiles as being related to Ra, to Apollo, to the God of the sun in the heavens. So they perceive that we're actually righteous, and that if they kill us off, they'll be able to steal our righteous souls and then become righteous themselves. So though they claim to be the holy ones, the subplot of all this is that they actually perceive themselves as being the most evil people, and they want to cleanse themselves of that by killing us off and taking our righteous souls, and by having us blamed for all of their sins. And the more that we suffer, the more their sins are cleansed, which is why they're turning the surface of the earth into hell and causing us to suffer, so that they obtain greater and greater redemption, and so that their souls become pure and pure, and they believe they are the second born, and therefore they inherit the soul and the birthright and blessings of the firstborn by killing us off and taking our place. Not accused before him. Let's see. God makes atonement for Israel and purifies them from all their sins, and they are not accused before him. Afterwards, the Satan comes and praises Israel, even though Israel is the sinner and the Gentiles are the righteous, blameless, pure, sacrificial animal. And the accuser becomes defender and departs. Christianity flips from being the accuser to being the defender. And you see that in Christian evangelicals and Donald Trump. Then God says to the 70 chiefs, the princes of the 70 nations, who are the generations of Noah, and then Esau and Jacob are born, and Esau's prince becomes the chief of the chiefs, Samael, the devil himself, that surround his throne. Do you see how this informer is always seeking to attack my sons? His sons are God's supposed, and it's the god Seth Typhon, the holy sons of God. The Gentiles are the sons of Satan. And they attack. Satan's job is to attack his sons because his sons are sinners and Satan's sons are pure. So they have inverted everything in this code. And I'm the first one to decipher all this. A certain goat has been sent to him with a tablet recording all their sins being God's sons, being the Israelites' sins, and errors which they have committed before me, and he has accepted it. Then they all agree, the 70 chiefs of the Goy nations, then they all agree that those sins should be discharged on the head of Satan's own people, of the Gentiles. Rabbi Abba said, at first, all those sins cleave to him, and afterwards they are discharged upon the head of his people. Him is Samael, Satan the devil. His people are the Gentiles. So we're getting scapegoated and exterminating for what Israel has done. And though we are called the wicked and the evil ones, they concede that they perceive themselves to be the evil, wicked ones and just pass that off onto us. And they perceive us as being the righteous, pure, good ones. And they view that as a vulnerability because in the book of Job, it states that he who does not engage in evil falls prey and is a victim. So it's better to be evil than good. On this day, the priest is crowned with superior crowns and stands between the heavenly and earthly beings and makes atonement for himself and his house. This is the high priest on the day of atonement, Yom Kippur. At the moment when, and the sanctuary and all Israel, we have learned that at that moment when he enters the blood of the bullock, he concentrates his finger. Well, this isn't so important as this one line. If the heathen, meaning us, the Goyim, the Gentiles, especially the Christians, knew that of that he-goat, they would not leave Israel alive a single day. That's why they keep all this hidden. But I've now exposed it, and you understand it. This is also expressed in that same volume of the Zohar, which addresses Leviticus. This is folio 62A to B. Let me get out of the way. We have learned that on the side of the mother, there are two emissaries attached to her left hand who roam about the world to spy it out. Now, Israel are God's portion. The Jews believe that only they are the children of God and that the Gentiles are the children of the devil. And from his great love for them, he gave them one day in the year to cleanse and purify them from all their sins, the Day of Atonement, Yom Kippur. And therefore, on this day, they are crowned and safe from all executioners and hostile emissaries. It is written that Aaron cast lots upon the two he-goats. That's in Leviticus chapter 16, and also explained much more thoroughly in the Talmud in the tractate Yoma. Why is one of these for the Lord? Because God said, let one abide by me and the other roam about the world, for if the two were combined, the world would not be able to stand against them. The second one, therefore, goes forth. And when he finds Israel absorbed in religious service and pious deeds and all at peace with one another, he can see no opportunity to bring a charge against them. We have learned that there are many demons under his control, whose office it is to spy out the earth for those that will become these artificially intelligent robots, surveillance cameras, drones, cell phones, computers, its smart devices, etc., who transgress the commands of the law. But on that day, there is no opening for any accusation against Israel. When that he-goat reaches the rock of Azazel, of Satan, of Samael, there is great rejoicing, and the emissary who went forth to accuse returns and declares the praises of Israel, just as Donald Trump consistently does. The accuser becoming the defender, the accuser Christian becoming the defender of Israel. And not only on this day, but whenever Israel desire to be cleansed of their sins, God shows them how to restrain the accusers by means of the offerings which are brought before him, the Holy One, blessed be he, and then they cannot harm. But this day is more efficacious than all, Yom Kippur. And just as Israel appeased all below, so all those who have accusations to bring above Samael and the 70 princes of the Gentiles are appeased, though all the service is to the Holy One. We have learned that at that hour of which it is written that Aaron should have the two he-goats, all those accusers, and the goats also represent Esau and Jacob, and Esau is the scapegoat who goes to Satan. And all those accusers above arouse themselves and seek to go forth into the world. And when Aaron brings near, those below, those above are also brought near. The lots are produced for both sides. Satan and God are given their portion. And as the priest casts lots below, so the priest casts lots above. And just as below, one is left for the Holy One, and one is thrust out into the wilderness. The wilderness is the mansion of Satan. So above, one remains with the Holy One, blessed be he, and one goes forth into the supernal wilderness. So the two are connected. Let me explain what's meant by all that. In the Pirkei de Rabbi Eliezer, which is a very important text in Judaism, it explains that both sides have to get their portion so that they're satisfied. And when the devil is given his portion, which means the literal human sacrifice of all the Gentiles, he becomes appeased and is grateful to Israel for offering him this sacrifice of the Gentiles, of Esau, and then he happily exterminates his own children out of gratitude for being given this taste of flesh, which then satisfies his appetite for sacrifice and places him in his mind to the level of God, related to his kingdom of the surface of the earth, so that he feels that he's in balance with God and is not lesser than God, but has been appeased by the human sacrifice of all the Gentiles. And they believe that they trick Samael on this day into killing off his own children in the name of obtaining a status equal to the status of God, and that this balances out the world, and that they then become holy because we have been blamed for their sins, and they believe that that cleanses them. And that's why you see them cutting the throats of chickens and swinging them around, because they believe that the chickens then cleanse them of their sins and they become holy, even though they are themselves sinners.
That is, I mean, obviously that's a whirlwind of information, guys. But really, you can see the overall kind of the overall structure of that is being blamed for someone else's sins. And what I would like to ask, Chris, just
Not
on
just
on a,
being blamed, but being
being
sacrificed.
sacrificed, yeah, being
And
sacrificed, yeah.
that's where we're headed, I'm afraid.
And these people are putting this symbology out there in the open now. What do you think the purpose behind Donald Trump Jr. putting that out? Most people look at it and say it's the greatest of all time. I get that, but do you think it's almost like because he would have been raised in this? Is it a cry for help? Is it, oh, we're all going to get slaughtered anyway? Are they too far in it? Because they're pointing their hands down as well, those two. And I know Kushner's well in with the Chabad lot. Like, what is the symbology of them putting their hands down? And why would they risk putting that out if it wasn't just to, mock people?
One, they're supremely arrogant. They know they are in power now. They have won the election. They are demonstrating their fealty to secret societies and to Israel, so that they are showing that they are on board with all this 100%. And this sends out a coded message to all the Freemasons, to all the Kabbalists, to all the Gnostics and everybody else who's involved in this in the occult level. All the Satanists will understand all this. It's kind of a joke for them that nobody's aware of what they're actually doing. They believe that this generates an energy that they can feed off of. They believe that they are scripting this narrative so that through sympathetic magic, it becomes reality and it draws out this map of creation, which then becomes creation. It also tends to sow chaos and create confusion and to gaslight people and to make people unable to organize to oppose it, because everyone will interpret it differently and will argue over semantics and meanings and symbols. The intelligence agencies, and long before that, agencies of the crowns of all the heads of Europe and all the royalty, would use these kinds of tactics of dividing the masses and the public so that they could never form any kind of cohesive force of resistance or dissent. They also want to infiltrate what was called the alternative media and garner that narrative. So they put out a certain portion of the truth and reveal some of what they're doing so that their paid agents and influencers can then garner all of that and co-opt all the research that authentic people like we are doing and utilize it to gain the audience and gain credibility, but then insert all kinds of ridiculous things that demoralize people. And having co-opted the movement, they can get their people elected and pretend that these people who are the elites are actually in opposition to the elites. And we saw the Trump people playing that narrative consistently, even back in 2015 and 2016. You had the Goldman Sachs man, Steve Bannon, and you had Cambridge Analytica analyzing data, sending out emails, pretending to be the opposition to the swamp, pretending to be knowledgeable about all of these occult things, and pretending to be the authorities whom the public could trust as their saviors against the deep state. Now, this term deep state is very interesting. It comes out of Turkey, and it always represented the Ergenekon and the Derme crypto Jews of Turkey who perpetrated the Young Turk movement and the Armenian genocide. And that is where that term deep state comes from. It represented the crypto Jews of the Ottoman Empire and of Mustafa Kemal Ataturk's nationalistic nation of Turkey, which got rid of the Islamic Caliphate and destroyed the Ottoman Empire so that the Zionists could take over Palestine. And Ataturk was a Freemason. Ataturk was a crypto Jew, and he was descended by his own account directly from Şevket Sevi. So that is what the deep state really means, but they'll never tell you that. They themselves are this deep state. They are the Kabbalists of the Frankists who became Chabad Lubavitch. So I think that's why they're doing it. They're co-opting everything. They're mocking everyone. They're demonstrating how stupid the public is. They're getting us involved in discussions about it that will create chaos and atomize all of us so that we can never become a cohesive force of dissent. And so that they can co-opt what was called the alternative media. And you've seen that being led by comedians, and many of them degenerate comedians of the worst sort that are bringing down our culture to the lowest level. And all of this is part of the corruption of the West. And that's another big aspect of it. We are looking at images of Satan. So in their minds, they are projecting evil onto us and getting us to join in this satanic cult in the same way that the Christians did by depicting a Jewish corpse nailed to a cross as our God and getting us to abandon all the beautiful gods of the Romans and Greeks. They have us bowing before altars and worshiping Satan, literally. And that's the highest sin in Judaism, is to bow down to idols and worship idols. And this represents, again, the serpent hanging on the tree of knowledge, offering gnosis. That's where the word Gnostic comes from, which means knowledge. And Christianity was supposedly giving you the knowledge to obtain the logos to ascend back to the monad of the Holy One.
Yeah, it's insane when you look at it, like obviously, and then it's such a big thing. And then you have the Gnostics in there. You have all of these different understandings in there that seem to kind of basically built on this same kind of fall from heaven, rise above, entropy, and I think it's what's the one when you go up again? There's entropy on the way down, astrophy,
Epistrophe, and in Hebrew it's the word teshuva, meaning return. Epistrophe is the Greek word for return. If you look at the Sephirotic tree, thank you so much for bringing that up. If you look at the Sephirotic tree of life, you have the crown and the head at the top of Keter, and that was supposed to be the initial emanation of the holy light from the One, from God. And then it went down through Chokhmah to Binah, et cetera, all the way down to Malkut, which is the earth. And that is the process of emanation. Now, we think in general terms of emanation being good because it is the divine light coming down to manifest creation, and it is contained within vessels that contain that light. So we view that as good, but it's actually bad. It's actually a catastrophe because the unity of God, of the monad, is being divided. And when it is divided and pushed away, it attains distance from God. It becomes less unified, more divided. It becomes more evil. It becomes more detached from God. It becomes impure. And they call Satan the great divider. And Satan is all the way down below Malkut in the Kalipotic tree, beneath the Sephirotic tree that's filled with the demon vessels. So as the light emanates further and further and further, the serpent actually brings it and gathers it and stores it in the Kalipotic vessels below. But those who want to pursue what is called the right-hand path engaged in the opposite of emanation, of obtaining distance from God so that they could be elevated back up to God and reunite with God and lose their ego lose their individuality, lose their separation from God, so that they become part of the unio mystica, the ecstatic reunion with God. And they become nullified in that way by becoming holy.
The hive
The
mind, basically, Christopher. It's basically the hive mind. You will be pulled back into this one think hive mind where you won't be an individual anymore.
and that's exactly it. And the Chaldeans and others that initiated these beliefs referred to what you're referring to as the hive mind as being called the first intellect. It is the first intellect of the one. And then that got divided through the souls and the minds and the bodies of people. Now, the left hand path is the path of Satanism. And the left hand path wants to go the other way. Instead of ascending back into epistrophe, back to Teshuvah and the return to the Holy One that emanated the light, they want to get further distance from God and become further divided. Satan is referred to by Satanists as the great divider, so that they then themselves can become gods and create their own godly kingdoms. And they can learn from what they call the ancient ones, the demons in this Kelipodic realm, how to utilize their will to shape chaos and in that way become gods. And they can then create their own intellects through artificial intelligence, just as the first intellect created our intellect, our minds, gave us our sparks of soul and created the vessels for those souls and that intellect in our bodies. They are doing this and becoming gods themselves by creating artificial intelligence, by dividing their first intellect into these robotic intellects. And they have no soul from God. Instead, they have their soul from primordial chaos at the very base, at the bottom, where matter exists. So their soul is constructed out of the material world of Satan. So they become satanic. And they serve the role of Satan as being witnesses, as being surveillance cameras, drones, cell phones, and computers that spy on us, and as accusing us and feeding all that into the singularity that is going to assess all of our data as pre-crime and issue us a social credit score, to prosecute us for everything that they witness and accuse us, and then to become these drone demons, these robotic dogs with machine guns on their backs, to kill us, to annihilate us as our punishment, and to scapegoat us for everything that they're doing. They control the pornography industry. They control these degenerate comedians who are corrupting our culture and turning it satanic and constantly putting images of violence and Satanism in direct and encrypted forms before our eyes to force us away from God in their view so that we enter into this satanic realm. And they are geoengineering the earth to reflect the godly light of the creator, of the sun, of Ra, of Apollo, and instead make it the darkness and the coldness and the chaos of hell. They are converting the world into hell in all of those ways.
So what we're talking about there, Christopher, and correct me if I'm wrong. So straight to mind is going, if you go on the right hand path and you're going up, say, just to try and put it in simplistic terms, you will end up at the monad, the one mind. If you're going down towards Satan underneath ground, you will end up in the hive mind of the transhumanist agenda, the one mind anyway. So it's the same outcome either way.
That's the way they perceive it. You got to go to hell to get to heaven.
Right.
They perceive it in that sense, but it's important to understand that they are defining what this hive mind represents. The mind of the Holy One, the first intellect, was instead defined by Gentiles, by the Greeks, by the Chaldeans, by the Egyptians, and it represented goodness and beauty and truth. That's the way Plato defined it. What they're creating is not goodness, beauty, and truth, but the polar opposite of that.
So, so it's the inversion of it, and it's you can see this exactly what you're saying. So when these guys and we'll move on in a minute. I know you've if we could do a bit more because we want to get into the underground stuff as well in terms of Hollow Earth, in terms of like what the Trump stuff. Um, if these guys, I just want to ask a quick question. So these Trump and Kushner are pointing down. Are they signifying they are part of the the downward spiral, the left-hand path, and they're in on the game? Um, and anyone who's pointing upwards, would they be signifying they're part of the right-hand path, but it all leads to the same thing anyway?
Wouldn't go so far as to say that. They would be signifying that they're representing as above in order to indicate so below.
Yeah.
Everybody is familiar with the Star of David, the Magen David, the Shield of David, and you have two triangles. You have one pointing up, which represents the male organ of the phallus. And you have the other triangle pointing down, which represents the womb, the female aspect. So you have the male and the female as the opposites. You have above representing the heavenly realm, and you have below representing the satanic earthly realm. You have Keter and you have Malkut, and then you descend through Malkut from Shekinah to Lilith down into the Kelipodic tree beneath. So when they show this symbol pointing down, they're saying that they want to make the earth as it is in heaven. They want to make a realm in which God can live and transform the earth into heaven. But their God is the satanic God of primordial chaos, of formlessness, emptiness, and darkness, Seth Typhon. So what they're saying is that they want to eliminate us. They want to eliminate the sun. They want to see, we get confused because we perceive this elevation as being elevation up to the sun, because that was the Platonic and Mithraic interpretation of all this. The Sephiroth represented the 7 planets that your soul would ascend to reach and cross over the great divide into the past the realm of the stars to the true realm of God, to the monad, the Holy One, which is beyond all of this creation below. And that very top part is the top 3 Sephiroth, Keter, Chochmah, and Binah. And then you have this 11th hidden Sephiroth called Deat, called knowledge, which is the tree of knowledge. And that gives man the knowledge of how to cross over that abyss. So they have to jump over these Sephiroth, and that's why we see them wanting us to go to Mars. It is this ascent up the planets so that eventually we can cross through the stars and reach God. They are making physical all these metaphysical principles. And Islam has that same idea that your soul descended down the 7 planets and has to go back up the 7 planets. So what they also want to do is to create this Garden of Eden in this hollow earth that they believe. And if you want to transition into that discussion, I can show the proof. Now, people should understand that in our last conversation, I demonstrated that it was always the Kabbalists and the Freemasons who were behind this idea of a hollow earth, and that this inner earth contains a sun of its own, and that it represents the Garden of Eden, and it can be accessed through portals at the North Pole and the South Pole. And I showed that they were Freemasonic presidents, James Polk, Andrew Johnson, and Harry Truman, who were pushing the idea of expanding the United States. And Andrew Johnson and Harry Truman were Freemasons who pushed the idea of annexing the Arctic, as much of it as possible, to the United States. Andrew Johnson bought Alaska and called for annexing Canada, Greenland, and Iceland. And Truman also called for annexing Greenland, and he was a high-level Freemason. And we now see Trump, who is a Kabbalist, calling for the annexation of the Arctic. And the reason they want to do that is because, one, they want to establish American Siberia as a gulag for European peoples. And 2, they want to gain access to that portal and create a subterranean Garden of Eden as they geoengineer the earth into hell. They hope to ultimately make the earth much warmer, though their geoengineering tends to have the opposite effect. And they want to scorch the equatorial regions, defrost the polar ice caps and create a Garden of Eden below the ground in the northern North Pole area, in the northern Arctic.
Well, let's transfer over to, if you're okay to do an hour on that. We said that before, and if you're okay to do that, or 45 minutes, guys, if you come back next week, and you can hear basically the information that adds upon last a couple of weeks ago's show. So go back and watch that one. Obviously, watch the one we've just done, but please support Christopher on his website, cjbbooks.com, because obviously he needs to get new kit. He does this off his own back. So I urge anyone in the comments, if you find this fascinating as much as I do, please do go over and get the books. Please do go over and support Christopher on his website. I really appreciate your time. If you're okay to do another hour, and we can go into this Hollow Earth. And I want to make it clear that you don't believe in the Hollow Earth theory. You're just saying what you're telling the audience what they believe and what they're trying to make happen.
Yes, I've traced out and translated a French text from Casanova that explains, and he was a high-level Freemason and a Kabbalist, and all of his associates were high-level Freemasons and Kabbalists. They sent the police after Casanova to see what secret and banned books he had related to Kabbalah and Freemasonry. And I've translated the text that will convince everyone that they believe that the inner earth has an inner sun, has portals in the Arctic, and represents the Garden of Eden, from which the wicked were expelled onto the surface, which they believe to be hell, to be punished on this surface. And that if we want to go back to paradise, we will have to find that portal into the inner earth and enter into the inner earth, where there is this central, unmoving, always lit sun. And that will be our paradise. But it won't be our paradise. We're slated to be killed off in the process of constructing all of this for them, and then it will become their Garden of Eden. And I've demonstrated that they believe the Cave of the Patriarchs in Israel is one of the portals into this underworld. And we can dig deeply into all the proof that I've come up with, that this, for several centuries, dating back at least to 1666, has been publicly discussed by Kabbalists and Freemasons. And they expressly state that this inner world is the Garden of Eden, that it's lit by a central sun, and that the wicked ones were expelled from it into exile on the surface of the earth, which is the actual hell. So again, they're inverting everything.
Well, if you're okay to stay around for another hour, we can get into that. Guys, do please go over to cjbbooks.com and support Christopher's work. And we will see you in a week's time here on Ickonic.com. Remember to do your own research, come to your own conclusions. This is the stuff that you're not going to hear other than Christopher's own channels anywhere else. And this is the information that really is, that they don't want you to hear. So we'll see you in a week's time. Take care. Goodbye.